Nakitlong ka Ri Khasi. Ngiwan lam shapi ko sngur bakhuj parpashngam. Ka beats aqua. Shposnem dang yai Pynjot sliang.
Got your results? Looking for a new course in nursing and paramedical course? Admission open at one of the topmost colleges in the country, East-West Group of Institution Bangalore, recognized by Indian Nursing Council and Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science. Choose your courses on your screen. Hurry up, limited seats available. For more details, you can contact the link given below.
Meghalaya Pradesh Congress Committee MPCC Hakasing Palay kala sanga tenge ya National Testing Agency NTA kaja ka Sorkar India halor ka jing bamler ka jongka bakan punya dia ka examen jongka NEET UG perkala dawa bagade ban penthma ya guru komtri kam ka jongka abakren bekilar pathai Khubor kinong ilam ka Congress kila kno baga jing wanra ya ka jing kluma di Samla bunsin halo ka jing punya dia ka examen jongka NEET kala that madan ya ka jing long Lyngkrang jongka NTA ka bla Pynjot bat pendo jing shania ya ki Samla jongka Ri ka Congress kala dawa ba Myntri katnat puli puthi ka Ri uday ban Hiar Shuki no mardor pat day ban thung da kajing toket kaban light load ban ti ya kajing bamler jongka NEET pat ka NTA nado arhajar arpusaw hado arhajar arpunriu ka Congress kala dawa paka sorkar ka day bakan say da ka white paper halo kajing trekam jongka NTA pat ban say madan ru ya kajing pentrekam ya kajing ajing mut jongka Radha Krishnan Committee bat ban wanra ya kajing trekam ka bashay bat ka bakhoy ha ka NTA ka Congress kala kam ba kumba sa hajar shispa anrup saungut ki bayele ya ka examen jongka NEET hagni ka jylla Meghalaya kila shak tajur ha ki khat south li jakai le examen kala pun pauru ya ka jing sokya halo ka jing balai kendo de ki Samla na ki jakan nong pendong banyak kun ya kene ka examen na ki jing bambyang ki jaka hikai pat ki wei ki jing don kam ka Congress kala ong bagi Samla puli kim day ban kala langknya tang namar ki jing bamler ko kompanya ki NTA bat kala dawa ya ka sorkar pedeng bakan pentikna baka jing long shai baka jing khoi ha ka jing bam pentrai kam ban penyo byang ya ka jing shania ki Samla jongkari.
It's called a Shuki Gunj, which is essentially the Congress's attempt to raise awareness about the state of the education system in the country today. So this is a data-driven press conference. So I've shared the numbers, the notes with everyone. It's basically a ready reckoner. So if you want to have a look at the numbers, feel free. If you have any questions, you can ask on the basis of those numbers. So let me begin it this way. The NEET leak, paper leak, is just a symptom. I think most of you are aware of what happened in the last 1 month with regards to the leakage of the NEET paper. This was in May. And 5 days after the exam was conducted, it had to be cancelled when a leak was detected. There was a guidebook that was in circulation, and when the investigators checked the data and the information of the guidebook, they realized that almost 60 to 70% of the questions that were being circulated actually were from the main paper. That's the main reason why the NEET exam was cancelled eventually, and it was rescheduled in June. And the numbers are quite staggering, because if you look at the numbers, more than 22 lakh aspirants had to attend this exam, and it was cancelled in May, as I mentioned earlier, because a guest paper circulating in coaching hubs was found to overlap heavily with the real paper. It was reconducted on 21st June 2026 at 5,440 centers across 551 cities and 14 centers abroad, mobilizing hundreds and thousands of personnel. So for us, this repeated leakage of question papers is a great cause of concern. I'm saying this Rahul Gandhi opened his speech in Kota. He said, this is not about the Congress, and he was not going to talk about the Congress or the BJP. This is us, parents, concerned citizens. For example, I'm a third generation teacher here, and my colleague over here, Mr. Bankhra, is a teacher by profession. He runs a school. Manuel has families, right, who are in the teaching profession. Like I said, I'm a third generation teacher. My family, has set up 2 schools. We've set up 1 college. And on top of that, almost all my cousins, all my aunts are in the teaching profession. So for us, it's really a cause of concern, because the NEET, it's just a symptom. The disease, the ailment is somewhere else. And for us, we felt that it's very, very important that, that we highlight where the ailments are. And for us to understand, where the issues are, we have to look at the numbers. For example, I've shared the numbers with you. If you look at the combined public spending on education from 2013-14, it's 3.8% of GDP. The combined public spending on education center plus states in 2021 has increased, no doubt, to 4.64% of the GDP. But I want to draw your attention to the latest PRS estimate on the combined spending, that is 2022-2023, which indicated that there has been a drop in the percentage of GDP of the budgetary allocation. Now, if you look at the NEP 2022 target, the government had made it very clear that the target is 6% budgetary spending of the GDP. But if you look at the numbers, the Ministry of Education expenditure growth 2015, 16 to 2025, 26, there's been only a 5% annualized growth. I think later on Manuel probably will explain the numbers, the significance of these numbers and the implications of these numbers in detail. And I would like to share this another very, very important data with you. This is from the Ministry of Education. This is the budget estimates for the year 2024-25. The number is huge. It's 1,20,628 crore. But here is the devil is in the details, actually. If you compare this data with the data that was released by the Ministry of Education in the previous financial year, we noticed that there has been a 7% lower allocation. So the budgetary allocation for the year 2024 to 25 has seen a reduction of around 7%. Now 7% out of 1,20,000 crore, 628 crore is a huge amount. Now it doesn't stop there. The data further indicates that that the higher education allocation for 24-25, that is the budget estimates, has further reduced from by 17% lower than the 2023-2024 revised estimates. Now again, as a teacher, this is a particular concern for me because I teach in the university. When I saw this number, I was quite shocked, because the UGC allocation for 2024-25 budget estimates was reduced by 61%. Now I'll repeat that. The UGC allocation for 2024-25 was reduced by 61%. No wonder, we have problems. And especially in the higher education space, I think most of the members of the press for here, you've covered the issues that have been happening in the EU in the last 3 to 4 years. I think one of the main reasons, apart from the issues that have been highlighted, is this fact that that there's been a significant reduction on the higher education and the UGC allocation, which again I said, I quoted the number, a reduction of 61%. Now again, if you look at the Education Ministry again, 24-25 versus 25-26, the budget estimate versus the revised estimate, there's been a 5% lower than budgeted. Now, if you look at the school education underspending 24-25 revised versus budget estimate, there's a 7% lower than budgeted. Higher education underspending 2024-25 revised estimate versus budget estimate, we see a 2% lower than budgeted. Now we come to another very, very important scheme, which is the midday meal scheme. Of course, it has been renamed by the BJP government. When I saw this, I was quite shocked, because between 24 and 25, between the revised estimates and the budget estimates, we see a 20% lower than budgeted. Now you're talking about 20%. Now the PM portion, as many of you are aware, is actually like, a scheme that has been designed for the underprivileged children. This is to incentivize them to come to school, to least like, for those students who come from underprivileged backgrounds. The idea that, that you're going to get a meal in the school is a very, very important, incentive. So a 20% reduction in the PM portion speaks a lot about the priority of this government, the central government. Now, I want to quote another very, very important number, very, very important data. This is the PM Shri program. Between the revised estimate and the budget estimate, we noticed that there's a 26% lower than budgeted. Now, the PM Shri program is another flagship program of the central government, which was designed, which was rolled out to improve the learning outcomes, to improve the infrastructure and the teacher training education in the country. But we noticed that that in 24 and between 24-25 there was a 26% lower than budgeted between the revised estimate and the budget estimate. Now we come to another program which is called the STARS program. We noticed that that there's been a 32% lower than budgeted between the revised estimate and the budgeted estimate. Another flagship program which is meant to again incentivize, which is meant to help students coming from underprivileged background is the Student Aid, the SAF. Again, we noticed that there's been a 33% lower than budgeted between the revised estimates and the budget estimates. The PM Usha program, again another staggering number, because we see a 51% lower than budgeted between the revised estimate and the budget estimates. So I'm sure once you get to go through these numbers in detail, probably you'll understand the significance of what's happening in the country today. So like I said, the need is just a symptom, but I think the ailment, the main problem is the simple fact that the BJP really doesn't care about the state of education in the country. That is this is something that that we've gathered from these numbers. Again, that's a document that I've shared with you. If you look at the teacher vacancies, there are 8,46,647 posts that are vacant across the country. And the parliamentary panel warns of a nearly 10 lakh vacancy. So you can imagine, you're talking about almost a million. That is 10 lakh vacancies in schools across the country. So again, this number is indicative of the priority of the government, especially the central government, in the education sector. So so those are the key numbers that I would like to share with you. Before I move on, I would also like to highlight another very, very important let's say concern. This is regarding the NTA, that is the national. Now, if you look at the education education is on the concurrent list, which is a shared responsibility of the center and the states. Yet NEET, CUET, and the NTA-led national testing have concentrated power in Delhi. When the centralized system collapses, as evidenced by the leak, the NEET leak, Delhi takes the credit for control, but pushes the blame onto students and states. So the same person is visible in school funding. The system told Parliament, the centre told Parliament in the financial year 24-25 that Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal received no Samagra Shiksha funds, which is roughly around 328.90 crore for Kerala, rupees 2,151 crore for Tamil Nadu, and rupees 1,745 crore for West Bengal. These funds were not released because the three states refused to sign the MOU, which is sign the PM Shri MOU, tying them to the centre's policy. Later, of course, we came to know that the funds were released for Kerala. and Tamil Nadu. But the fact that the center used this as a leverage mechanism to coerce and to force the states into signing, into accepting the policies of the central government is indicative of how the central government is actually using policy as a political tool. So we are very concerned about that also, because this money is not the central government's money, it's the people's money, and it's meant for government school children. But in this particular case, like I highlighted, it was used as a lever, as a leverage to force compliance. Now, for a small funding dependent state like Meghalaya, this sets a frightening precedent. Either we agree with Delhi, or we get penalized. So this is another major concern as far as the education system is concerned in the country today. We're very, very concerned about the autonomy of the states to take decisions, to take policy decisions to address the needs and requirements of the system, of the education system in the state. Now, I would like to draw your attention to another very, very important point. This is the underfunding of public education. I made a reference to the NEP 2020 earlier, and this is another point that I would like to share with all of you. Now, the NEP 2020 repeats the decades-old promise to raise public education spending to 6% of GDP. The latest official figure cited in Parliament puts it at just 4.12% of GDP in 21-22. Now, the Union Budget 2024-25 then cut the Education Ministry's allocation by 7%, with higher education down 17%, and the UGC's allocation slashed by about 61%, from roughly 5,200 crore to 2,500 crore. Now, when public schools and colleges are starved, families are pushed toward private coaching. And it's very significant that Mr. Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition, launched the campaign from Kota. I think like all of you are familiar with Kota. That is a very, very famous city in Rajasthan. It is the coaching mecca in the country, and people, students go there to prepare for competitive exams, in particular your NEET and CUET, and also the GE joint entrance exam. So what is happening today in the country is that judging from the numbers, we feel that the central government is abdicating its responsibility for ensuring that that quality education reaches, or rather percolates down to the lowest levels of society. So what has happened as a consequence of this is that we see that there's been an increasing shift, especially of the middle class, from government-funded education to private-funded education, and in particular, the trend of coaching is very, very worrying. And I'm sure, most of you have heard of these sordid stories and horrible stories of students committing suicide in Kota. I think there was a movie also that was made recently. So what we feel is that, judging from the numbers, if you were to, interpret the numbers, we see that, that the central government is slowly, or rather, maybe deliberately abdicating its responsibility of ensuring that, that education reaches right down, or it goes down, right down to the lowest spectrum of society. So when public schools and colleges are starved, families are pushed toward private coaching, private colleges, and education loans. The high-stakes national exam becomes a market. Those who can pay for coaching get an edge. Those who cannot are left behind. A poor student in a hill village competes against a coach student in a metro. On paper, they take the same exam, but they never started from the same line. So we all know that education is supposed to be the great leveler, the great equalizer, But in this case, because of what is happening in the country today, an underfunded public system plus an exam that rewards expensive coaching turns it into the opposite. That is a machine to protect, or rather a machine that protects the privilege. I'll just share with you one very, very important story, that I came across last week. This is a real story. I'm not making this thing up. Members of the press can actually and in fact the fact that that it has cut down or rather reduced certain scholarships. I have 2 scholarships, centrally sponsored scholarships over here that I came to know when I did the research, that there's one particular scholarship. This is the pre-matric scholarship for 6 notified minority communities, which includes Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains and Parsis, was discontinued for class 1 to class 8 from 22 to 23 and limited to class 9 and 10. There's another scholarship, very important scholarship, the Maulana Azad National Fellowship, which had supported nearly 7,000 research scholars, was again scrapped by the central government. The Padho Pardesh program interest subsidy scheme was also discontinued. Now, why is this important? These cuts directly affect poor students from notified minority communities, which include Christian students. In Meghalaya, where many rural students also come from scheduled tribe communities, the withdrawal of the support deepens existing insecurity. Scheduled tribe scholarship and fellowship schemes are administered separately and should not be conflated with the minority scholarship cuts. But again, the point that that these 2 very, very important scholarships were slashed or were reduced is really a cause of concern for us, and we feel that the central government should reinstate these scholarships. I've highlighted earlier, the AI. We talk about these latest tools, and we talk about tabs and so on and so forth. But we all know that there's no point in providing a school tabs or computers if there are no teachers. So before we get smart classes, before we get AI, before we get tabs, the school needs a teacher. Yet a Rajya Sabha answer for 23-24 records more than 8.46 lakh teaching posts vacant. 7,22,385 at the elementary level and 1,24,262 at the secondary level. Now, a separate parliamentary panel has won over vacancy crisis nearing 10 lakh and has urged an end to contractual hiring. Again, I don't need to spell out the consequences of the lack of teachers. School runs if teachers are there. If there are no teachers, then there's no school. So the fact that in India today, we're looking at a number of around 10 lakh. That is again very, very worrying for us. And like I said earlier, the NEET paper leakage is just a symptom. You want to diagnose the problem. The crux of the matter, the heart of the matter lies in these very, very important numbers. So the single biggest thing the government could do for ordinary students is to put a qualified permanent teacher in every classroom. But what we see in India today is the exact opposite. 10 lakh vacancies. That's 1 million vacancies across the country today. Again, there are other reports that I would like to share with you. This is the deeper school crisis. The fact that many schools are being shut down in the country today. We will not talk about learning outcomes because again, that is a totally different issue altogether. But I would like to just share this data with you. The ASA 2024 report found that that about 23.4% of class 3 children in government schools could not read, in fact, a class 2 level text. We're talking about learning outcomes. And then we're also talking about the NEET. The UDI's 2024-25 records, which talks about the dropout rate, which is around 8.2%. So those are the numbers that I would like to share with you. And of course, the digital India, the digital divide. I think I've mentioned this earlier also. The fact that the UDI's 2024-25 data shows that schools with computer access are only 64.7%, and schools that have access to internet are at 63.5%, meaning more than a third of schools still lack computers and they lack the internet, access to the internet. So again, this is very, very worrying because the NTA is shifting the exam to a computer mode, right? I mean, this is online mode, So how do you conduct these exams when, when almost one third, or rather, almost 40% of the schools do not have access to computers or have access to the internet, So yes, so those are the points that the data points that I would like to share with you. So if you have any
going on, I know press conference was there from your side. Is it not too late? Your
sorry?
reaction to the NEET issue.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your
Is
question.
it not too late, your reaction to the NEET issue?
No, I don't think that it's too late, In fact, the NTA, as you're aware, was set up very recently, and we've been watching. It has made a lot of mistakes, no doubt, in the past, but like they say, it's better late than never, and we feel that especially this juncture when we've seen that multiple leaks happening, we feel this is the right time to raise this issue.
It's not too late, not because of the fact that it's not one of a kind that has happened only once, right? So what Balang here is trying to pinpoint is basically it's a systemic problem, and this systemic problem arises from a policy problem.
Yes.
And the policy problem arises from the fact that the government itself doesn't seem to be bothered as to how to uplift the education system in the country. So if you say it's too late, I don't think so, because we're not having a knee-jerk reaction. I think the details that he has spelled out is pretty comprehensive if you look at it from every aspect of it, whether it's a budget spending, whether it's a lack of infrastructure, whether it's a lack of manpower, whether it's a lack of intent.
Yes.
The most importantly is the lack of intent as far as the government is concerned to improve the education system in the country. And if you've noticed that there's a lot of talk, right, that even the NEP itself says that 6.1% is what it recommended. 6.1% of the total GDP is a recommendation of the NEP to spend in terms of education. But if you notice that the government themselves does not seem to be spending so much, I think even if you look at the past 3, 4, 5 years that he's collected the data, it's coming to 3.8 to 4.6%. So that's a huge difference between what they have asked for and what the government. So when you translate that percentage, it amounts to nearly 30,000 crores of actually deficit in terms of money. So that will obviously translate to a lot of difficulties that will happen. See, the thing is, if you again go back to his presentation, he had also mentioned that if you notice that especially at a higher education level, when it comes to UGC and so on and so forth, which actually works on improving critical thinking. I think the government does not want people to have critical thinking at all. It just shows that the government only wants education to be a tick mark, and that's the approach in which they've been doing for the past many years. No, it's rearing its ugly face, and Meghalaya seems to be one of the states in which it's burdening the most, right? One of the most. Yeah.
Minimal.
Sorry, Jules, which number is this?
Not, I think. 19.7%, the lowest is computer access. Meghalaya has this figure. And at the same time, we also have the TV terrain. So, you received any complaints from the students who appeared in the exams, all these difficulties?
Yes, Mr. Jules, to answer your question, like I said earlier, I opened the press conference by telling you that that I'm a third generation teacher and that we have 2 schools. My colleague over here, Mr. Banpira, could also probably share his insights on this particular issue. But yes, we do. There have been many instances where, especially people from rural areas, expressing, you could say, almost like a desperation, like a desperate cry, the fact that they don't have access to these ICT tools. So the numbers speak for themselves. 19.7% of computer access in Meghalaya is one of the lowest in the country. So yes, maybe Mr. Banpira could also share his experiences as a school teacher and as someone who's travelled the length and breadth of the state.
When we are trying to address this issue, whereby our students does not have access to computers, to internet. There's another example from Myntri, where a student has passed her NEET exams. It was last year, but because of limited access to internet and even to a smartphone, she missed the deadline to fill up her forms or maybe to get admission in an institute. So this is just a small example. What Bala has been stating from before, we can just sum it up as a total lack of seriousness of the government in the center as well in the state. It's all talk, it's lip service, whereby they are showing that the people in the rural areas would be benefited by all the schemes and policies of the government. But in reality, people in the rural areas, people who lack access to the computer, to the internet, they are missing the opportunities that students in the urban centers are getting. And if the media, if we can bring up such stories forward, right, we will know the real plight of our society. This is just one story. I believe if you go around the length and breadth of our state, there will be thousands of complaints, maybe lakhs.
Mr. Jose, I would like to share instances where students who apply for the CUET exam, especially in New, coming up to us later on, telling us that that they could not complete the application process because they didn't have access, number one, to the internet, or because when they go to these community service centers, right? The person who keyed in the data, who entered the data, has done it, erroneously, and because of that, many of the so-called students, they miss the exam, and sometimes when they come to us, we have to tell them, there's nothing much that we can do. So yes, there are many instances, and like my colleague Saban has rightly pointed, maybe we request the members of the press to actually look into this and find out real life stories of the challenges that our students, the student community, they face because of the lack of access to computers and the lack of access to the internet.
Lily, Pikalan.
Kanda pitrai kami kabisa. Balik itu na hadu kami.
Kenapa kami kami?
Mana bawan kata baci?
Kau lawan.
Lawan pun.
Ila kham stom mentah.
Bila su palan. Wan num dan jeng tiang ni ai. Mentah tu penhiar mensiam suki bat ngamo.
Kali jong na kan ni? Ba, ka hospital te kala ajngai nang ni. Kabai kali pan?
Kabai kali latip ke sarkar.
Pintia suahang ni hadu nda de por kamu. Wat ku selaitan. Ba kan dekat skim kalau ya rap cibun ya kelong yang kum jong pi.
Shim kene kabam. Ku beli shibun sister. Ngiran kaman siwi ai.
Peruk kalau hika sarkar.
Ku beli shibun. jaga ka babyang.
Ka sarkar ka jarab ikit kiba aplang.
Kublai shibun.
Sister, hapsiu kat nama.
Ka sarkar kala siulut ikijing lut jing separo.
Kabli sipuan ma.
Ngi ki bakar do ngampoi perkhat banyok kum kani kajing yarap. Hawat kan?
Kanika Chief Minister Safe Motherhood Scheme. Kala ay jing rap yang isibon bahaki patba.